Good tidings, fellow friends of the world, it's Zeklo, and welcome to another Don't Starve Together theory video. But, just a word of forewarning, this video is mostly speculation, and the things we discuss don't have as much foundation as I usually like to have. It was just a thought that occurred to me, and I really liked where it was going, and I wanted to share it with you guys to see what you think. The overarching question of today is, why were the characters chosen? More interestingly, why do all their names start with W? Yes, the question everyone has thought about at least once. I do want to note that this video, like most, is for fun. I personally think the W deal is probably mostly stylistic, but I do have a possible answer if it isn't, which we'll get into. First, we start at the beginning. Good old single-player Don't Starve with our friend William, also known as Maxwell, getting dragged into the Don't Starve world by the nightmare creatures. As with all my videos, it's recommended you have watched the previous ones, or you might get a bit lost. Because something you should know by now is that the nightmare creatures are the ancients. And this is important because they lack a king and queen. So Maxwell gets pulled into the world, and he ends up tricking the main cast of characters under the disguise of the overarching villain of the game. But that's not true. Maxwell is a puppet for the nightmare creatures, and the nightmare creatures are just a victim of them. If you're confused, you should really watch the previous videos. In other words, although the characters of the game blame Maxwell for their situation, he is not the main issue. He's only a small piece of the much bigger picture, being a puppet more than an actual king. Ever since they were first introduced into the game, the shadow creatures always had one thing going for them, and that's the fact that they are not hallucinations, which is something we should know very well by now. And instead are these creatures that are drawn to the insane. This leads us to criteria number 1 of being selected for the Don't Starve Battle Royale: insanity. Wilson is a typical mad scientist trope. He jumps at the idea of forbidden knowledge and goes through with such things as animal experimentation and even cutting his hand for blood. If that doesn't scream and not mentally sound, I don't know what does. No, wait, I know exactly what does. Willow! She's literally a pyromaniac. That's her title. She's the fire starter. I don't really need to say more than that, I don't think. Now, Wolfgang's a bit harder to pin down. I think it has something to do with their military background, because it opens up possibilities such as PTSD. I don't think he's going to get any sort of weird mental afflictions from a circus, although clowns are pretty creepy, I'm not gonna lie. Wendy clearly shows symptoms of depression, having lost her sister. There's not much more that needs to be said there. WX-78 lacks empathy, and they're sort of obsessed with killing living creatures. So, you know. Wickerbottom's another hard one. She suffers from insomnia, which I guess kinda counts, but I'd like to think it has more so to do with the cause of her insomnia. Because, why does she have insomnia? She knows many things, can create magical books, and can't sleep. I think they're all connected. I think, because she knows many things, it's what lets her create these magical books, and it's what keeps her up at night. I don't know what's in her head, but it's important. Woody. Now, I would have, no pun intended, normally said that he hears voices in the form of Lucy. But, as we know in Don't Starve Together, everyone can hear this, so it's not really as concrete. However, there is the big issue of the fact that he can turn into a beaver, because he's cursed. That's a problem. Wes! Truly an enigma among characters. Now, they're a special case, and much like him, I don't have much to say, so we're going to skip them. Though to be fair, being physically incapable of speech is probably an issue. Maxwell, or William, whichever you prefer. His descent into madness is more directly related to obtaining the Codex, but it could also have something to do with the despair of him being a sucky magician in his past. Wigfrid is an odd one. I'd have to pin this down as some sort of split personality issue, or something similar. She isn't entirely locked into her persona of a Viking, and she does break character, but she does get unnaturally invested and will refuse to eat vegetables even if it means life or death. Weber is literally a kid who got eaten by a spider. I would be concerned if he didn't have a few problems. Last but not least, Winona, who does not count because she's exclusive to Don't Starve Together, and her reason for being here is to rescue her sister. Alright, so the majority of them have undeniable problems that makes them valid for nightmare creature interaction. Maybe not as potent as true insanity, but a level of influence nonetheless. Now remember when I said the Don't Starve Battle Royale? I didn't just say that for the lulz. I mean, I did, but there's more to that. In essence, all Don't Starve was, story-wise, was a competition for the Nightmare Throne. Hence, battle, indirectly, but more so royale. You would come into the world, survive a bit, maybe die, you'd eventually find Maxwell's door, complete a few challenges, maybe fail, and then, hopefully, in the end at least complete the challenges, and then take the throne from the previous sitter. A really important piece of evidence we received was that nobody came before Maxwell on the throne, but many came after, though whether or not this is still true is questionable. And this is an interesting choice of words because we really only know of Wilson and Charlie actually taking the throne. In other words, when you played the first game and kept swapping people on the throne, that was canon. Wilson was just the one to get it last, which makes sense since he was the one to enter the Don't Starve world last. Apart from Winona, but again, that's Don't Starve Together. Okay, but still, this has nothing to do with W. Well, this is where things get weird. What if W isn't a letter? Now, I know, probably just lost, like, all of you. What I'm saying is, in essence, all W is a symbol. A symbol we just so happen to recognize as the letter W. That doesn't mean that's the case for a different civilization, such as the Ancients. If we take a look at the Ancient language, we see a bunch of geometric shapes we really don't care about whatsoever. But if you slap some insanity onto them, we get what I dub the Nightmare language, a much more expressive and curvy set of symbols. Yes, symbols. What we know as W could very well mean something entirely different to the Ancients. The prime example being the Codex Umbra. Now, it's very possible that Maxwell took a marker and vandalized this ancient Eldritch tome, but I'd like to think he has more respect for literature than that. Instead, he may have seen the symbol on the cover and mistook it for an M, and then rebranded himself Maxwell after it. Now, the M is a whole other topic we'll put aside. Yes, W. What meaning could it have? Well, let's take a look at Pugna. Here's someone I haven't really covered in a video because I'm sort of waiting on a third potential event before I do that. But it's important that we note the symbol on their chest. Very much like a W. Now this one is curved in such a way that it resembles a helmet much more than other examples, but that doesn't entirely devalue what I'm about to say. This entire time we've been talking about the characters who are chosen to go through this little skirmish to see who would ultimately take the throne. And whoever did would become the one in charge, at least in face, since the nightmare creatures kinda still pulled the strings. Pugna, bearing this symbol, happens to be the one in charge in the Forge. And wouldn't you know it, he has a connection to the throne and the Ancients. And the W looking like a helmet? How about a crown? All a W is a three-pronged symbol. And you know what the other three-pronged symbols in the Nightmare language stand for? Preciousness and walking cane. Or more accurately, scepter. And who's someone of high value that wields a scepter? A king. That is literally it. The characters were selected from a pool of somewhat insane individuals, but stood out because the letter W that started each of their names was a symbol that represented power, authority, leadership, but most importantly, the right to the throne. They're the closest thing the shadow creatures can manage to an heir, at least until Meathies comes along. which is explained in a different video. But of course, all of this is just speculation, and quite raw speculation at that. One quick thing I want to interject into this video while editing is that W is 2 V's, and V in Roman numerals is 5. That's important because Charlie has a little Roman theme going on. And 2 5s is 10, and 10 is the beginning and end of a cycle of numbers. Thought I'd mention that. Might not be relevant. Could be a coincidence, but it's kinda neat. But what do you think? Is this a satisfying possible explanation for the question that's existed since the very beginning? Tell me your thoughts and theories down below. And if I piqued your interest, do like, subscribe, and keep being awesome. Thank you all for tuning in, and farewells.